Welcome back to our genetic deck testing here on YouTube. Where this is the first time I've encountered a pretty significant bug where it was just doing weird stuff. The code that I wrote to copy existing decks worked while there was existing decks. Now there's a whole bunch of new tribes without decks. It kind of failed on me. Everything else I've done up until this point, it's just run smoothly. It's just worked. And this is the first time I've had a huge thing that I had to figure out. That's pretty impressive for the scope of the project that I'm in. So what I've done now is I have all these two-color decks and all the additional tribes. So you've been seeing this 0 right next to the tribe name. That's tribe 0. There's actually 3 tribes for each archetype. And what that means is that's a feature that I will be adding a little bit later. I'm going to start the auto runner now that this is working. Basically, it's the multiple villages theory, if you're familiar with genetic algorithms, where there's multiple villages that all kind of develop separately, even though they're the same quote-unquote race. And sometimes people will travel between the villages. But right now they're not traveling between the villages. I actually want these to catch up. You may have remembered from before, these had like over 200, over 300. This last number here is the number of games, and right now these are all 0 because none of them have running games. Once they run their first game, all of these numbers will be updated. So right now it looks like we've got Boros and Gruul, and Boros, I think Red Tribe 2 is going, and I think one other, actually tell me right here, 2 Gruuls. Gruuls 1 and 2, Boros and Black Pride are all running here. So this whole spam push actually hadn't pushed everything. It's still here. So the new default for these is now 13, but it's not going to update this until it saves. Inside the computer's memory, it knows that this is 13. But until it saves these tribes, this isn't going to know that the new default is 13. I had originally set the default to 7, which is way up here. 13 is like here-ish. It's right where green and red are. This is going to show the highest of each, so these are all going to jump up to 13 when this updates. Ooh, yeah. Which it's not going to for a while. It has to run quite a few Apex tournaments before this updates. It's based on the population size, and there's more population. So I wanted to talk about the reason why I changed the tournament format. This is one of the reasons. If each of these are submitting 8 decks, we'd be dealing with like 100 matches over like 10 rounds. It would just get insane. So this way, it only has to run. All the matches are going to be 16 matches of 4 rounds each, except for culling tournaments. Culling tournaments actually get shorter because I removed the top decks from the risk of being culled after the second and third round. So the third round only winds up being 12 matches, and the last round only winds up being 8. The other thing is, as I mentioned in the last video, I was having problems with people matching, with the matching being a bigger determination than the actual deck. So this actually matches up. Let's say these 4 tribes here were to be matched up. Each white deck would play 1 black deck, 1 green deck, and 1 red deck. This is a better idea of fitness than if which deck you play is completely random, because different decks have different weaknesses and strengths based on the colors. There were so many other reasons why this was a good idea. Like I kept listing, when I was trying to decide whether I wanted to do this, I kept listing reasons why this would be better, and I can't think of what most of them are now. But there are tons of more reasons why this is better. So how this works is over here on the left. This here is the ranking of which tribes need most to go next. Right now they're all at 0. This is based on the number of tournaments run divided by their their rating. So the higher the rating is, the more often they're going to be run. Compared to, so for example, Colorless Pride is about 1/3 White Pride. It's going to want to run 3 white decks for going to want to run white 3 times for every 1 time that Colorless goes. So we're already starting to see the match that just finished. It didn't update the Apex. This is the default. 13 is the default. So Black, Boros, Gruul, and the 2 Gruuls are now at 13. They won't show up in here until this gets updated, because this core matches, the regular matches, no longer contribute points to this. This is only done by Apex matches now. That was another major change that I made, because these matches has any kind of random decks. Right now we've got 2 Boros and 2 Orzhov. Sorry, no. Dimir, Boros, and 2 Orzhov tribes. As I was saying, so this 13, this doesn't mean that they scored 13. This is the default. It also shows their population size here. $14.99 is about right for start. Sorry, yeah, $14.99 is about right for starting out. The other thing that I had coded, but I took out trying to debug the other thing, was the ability to weed out the cards based on the format. So I'm going to uncomment that code. The next time this loads, we shouldn't see any more masterpieces. So mostly I'm going to let this run for about half an hour so you can kind of see the genesis of the 2 color decks. I had wanted to talk more about why I did the 2 color system, but honestly I think I've said pretty much everything that, or not the 2 color system. I wanted to talk more about this, but it seems like that everything that I wanted to say has been said, which is disappointing because I actually thought I would be spending a lot of time rambling about this. I'm interested to see if white and black might have been the top 2 tribes, just because they were the top 2 tribes originally. Oh yes, this is what I want to talk about. So the reason these are blue is because they're basically ready for an Apex tournament. Just kind of like in the old system, every 10th tournament they want to do an Apex tournament, but it's based on individual now. So when 4 of these light up, there's a likelihood that they'll do an Apex tournament, but they're going to want to do ones that are adjacent to each other. So these 2 are adjacent to each other. So if more of these were to light up, these would actually fire into an Apex tournament, even though they're not being run right now. I have a feeling that these 2 would trounce the rest of the decks because the rest of the decks are random crap. Hate to say it, but they are. They're random crap initial nothing decks. They're right around 60 cards though. That was one of the things that I noticed when I was trying to create. Oh, there's one that's larger. I was trying to create decks, is that most of the decks wanted becoming undersized. They were being killed because they were undersized. So it's interesting. That's interesting to note. Not 100% sure the reason for that, even still, but that's fine. I want them to be closer to 60 cards anyway, rather than the 100 plus that they were. So, Contraband Kingpin, first official dual color card in our simulation. We saw a Contraband Kingpin in white, which wasn't supposed to be there. I actually saw white cast that. That wasn't a glitch, and that wasn't a difference between X-Mage and this. White actually cast that with I think he has some ether hubs out or caravan. I'm not sure how white got that. I honestly don't, but it's there. It'll probably get weeded out because it's, you know, it's kind of a useless card. And once I get the tribes going, so the other thing with the tribes is the second and third tribe are allowed to splash cards of other colors. That's one thing that I want to check. It was black that ran. Black, tribe 2. Oh, maybe not. Black, tribe 1. Card pool. This is a long list. They're not even supposed to get this long. Bomat Courier. Puzzle knots that are in the wrong colors. So unlicensed disintegration is a perfect example. That's what I was looking for. So unlicensed disintegration has black in it, but it also has red. So it's the tribes 1 and 2. Instead of saying, okay, you have to have all of my colors and no other colors, tribes 1 and 2 will say, okay, you're in one of my colors. Let's try you out. It'll also take, as we saw with the Bomat Couriers, it'll also take cards that are generic casting costs and use them regardless, regardless of what other abilities they have on them. And that allows it to splash things like Bomat Courier and the bird and the puzzle knots that are in the wrong colors. So those tribes are a lot less rigid to their colors. They also have a very, very small chance of pulling, in addition to those rules, cards that are completely different colors, which allows it to sometimes get basic lands. But honestly, most of its lands are probably going. Most of its off-color stuff is probably going to come from Ether Hub. Vantage Point. And that's the first dual-colored. That's the first dual land we've seen on the channel. I've seen Rainbow Pride start using some dual lands, but we're back to the point where the decks are so bad that they can barely even get out one land, and that's fun. I like watching decks do that and then get better. All of these decks will be just as good as the other decks in no time. Once this gets to around 100 simulations for each deck, I'll run another Apex tournament with the new top decks. I don't even know what color these are. Like I put the code in for the colors, and I don't even know what they look like. As you can see, I made the black. Before it was kind of a dark gray and white was a light gray, because I didn't want it to show up. I didn't want it to be obscured by the background, but then I changed that. We've got our first board stall of the new, of course, Boros versus Boros. Very solid white-red deck. Actually, mostly red, or mostly white for both of them. Actually, that's obscured because of the artifacts. At a glance, it looks like there's a lot of white creatures, but most of them are actually artifacts. Come on. Reload, thank you. And again, the results from the last one, it put them at 13 because it hasn't run them as an Apex tournament yet. Got Azorius versus Boros. I expect Boros to do very, very, very well in Kaladesh because Boros has dwarves. And the dwarves can really team up, especially with any kind of vehicles. So I expect Boros to do the best. Even though white and black are the two best tribes, I expect white-red to be the thing. It's funny though, because red is one of the least tribes right now. So there's that. Seeing a lot of new new faces on some of these tribes that are matching their colors. Some that aren't. I mean, Azorius isn't really a good fit for that. It's blue. It matches to the blue, but prefers black to white. That's a perfect fit for Azorius because he's both white and blue. Azorius versus Demir. Interesting. So you'll see down here as a flash, it will show the. I actually want to see this at the end of this. At the end of this tournament, I want to see what the archetype changes would have been. Again, it's not counting them because they're not Apex tournaments, but we could see what they would have been if they had counted. It's worth noting also that this list here doesn't sort the same way when there's a tie as it does in Java, so these aren't accurate to what's going to go next when there's a tie. That's why you haven't seen any green or rainbow decks go off. Stop watching after this because I think this is tournament number 4. It may be doing this alphabetically. Azorius, Boros, Demir. Oh, Gruul went too, so no. Gruul went first. We saw Noxious Gillerhulk, which is a Masterpiece Noxious Gillerhulk, which is in the correct colors, or which is in the format. So Masterpiece Noxious Gillerhulk is allowed. Hopefully that Masterpiece Gillerhulk sticks around. It's set up such a way that when I have these decks playing, never mind, Origins isn't in standard. But if these decks were to play in a format with Origins, it would use Hangerback Walker if it had a Masterpiece Hangerback Walker. The check for whether or not the cards are allowed is done at the deck building level, not at the genetic level. There's a quirk where currently, and I'm leaving this the way it is, currently it does the steel tech. You've probably seen it after each tournament. It sometimes will steel tech. And what that does is it puts a card into the card pool so that basically it sees what cards its opponents are using and sticks in the gene pool. Ooh, Lorwyn. But currently the way this is written is that when I do multi-format tournaments, because these These decks are legal in standard. They don't use all standard cards. They don't use all the cards in standard, but all the cards in these decks are legal in standard. So when I run these against standard decks, it could steal a standard tech, and then that standard tech can go in one of the decks. So that is a quirk that I'm currently allowing because the code didn't exist before, but it exists now. It's not going to use them outside of the proper formats. Of course, that was also what I said about the masterpieces. It was a quirk that I was temporarily allowing. I think that the ability to steal a tech of a different format is one that I'm going to be permanently allowing. I love seeing lands from different sets. Like, it's kind of like a little, ooh, that's neat. And I did that intentionally. Ooh, okay, so here we go. Okay, so Dimir versus Boros. Boros did better. Seriously? Stupid formatting. Dimir versus Boros. Kind of a wash between Azorius. These are actually mostly washes. The two Azorius decks did slightly better. Azorius versus Azorius. This Azorius. Azorius Pride 1 did better than Azorius Pride 0. Interesting. So 13, 12, 14, 15. Remember how I said 13 was kind of the average? That's what you're seeing there. So that's what they would have gotten if that had been an Apex tournament, but it wasn't. I want them to run at least 10 rounds before they do an Apex tournament, because that will call 10 decks that can't string 2 lands together, and it'll let them breed at least 10 times. Ooh, White Pride 1. I don't think it's allowed to get off-colored cards during deck building. I think it has to wait until its first generation. The new Rainbow Pride. Some Dimir going on. Red, white, Dimir, and rainbow. This is going at 3 times speed, or three up at a time. The way I do it when I'm sleeping. So they go by pretty quickly. It's supposed to take me half an hour to do one tournament. It's blitzing by, even more than 1/3 the speed, because if this stalls out, these can continue to run, and then I just have to wait for this to finish, rather than waiting for this to finish and then starting the next one. So this should be fun to see. I can't wait to see what dual color decks do well. Like I said, smart money would be on white-black because of the way white and black do individually. White-red, just because we know how good white-red is in Kaladesh. Also, wouldn't rule out black-green, because black-green has got a lot of good stuff. Green-red is an actual playable thing. Let's see if the computer can figure out the energy synergy with. And of course, I'm always rooting for Simic. Because I'm a Simic person. All of my favorite decks have always been blue-green. it's just never been a thing until Emerge, and even Emerge wound up going into red. So my next thing after this is going to be to do seeded decks. Seeded decks will allow me to basically put in decks that are human built and run them against the AI built decks. And that's part of that's tied into the tribe system. The tribe system, when it exiles, it's kind of designed to reinforce the seeded deck at tribe 0, to try and make sure that it keeps the seeded cards as the focus of the deck rather than trying to diverge too much. If that makes sense at all. None of this back here is going very interesting, so I'm going to enlarge this. I would try to open up the panels, but since there's 3 at a time, as soon as one ends, it becomes in front. So that these matches aren't ending when the new one starts. It's just the one back here is ending, and it'll start and bury the other one. And that doesn't give me enough time to open the decks. I barely have time to open the decks when I do one match at a time. And if I did open the decks, it won't even matter because it flips. Like it flips between all 3 of these. It doesn't just show the one that's open, and that's annoying. Yay, random mountain from another set. I know, I get strange joy from that. We'll let one more tournament after this one run. And then that'll be it for this video. I'll continue to run overnight, and when I'm at work tomorrow, I don't think I'll see 100 simulations of each deck until the weekend, just because of how many decks there are to do. I literally added 44 new tribes. There are 51 tribes currently in the format, or currently in the metagame. Can't string lands together. So we're starting to push these off the bottom. There's still more tribes here than we'll list until we've seen the ones that have one match. Because 0 divided by anything is 0. That land looked like it was a foil. I don't think this does foils. I think there's an option for foils in the settings, but I didn't really care about it. So we've got rainbow versus... Because of having to quash the drawing from other sets, the rainbow, these rainbow decks are completely random rather than being drawn from other versions. Same with all the decks. All the decks were supposed to be drawing from other editions, but it didn't happen because the code didn't work and it was creating errors. It kept creating decks that didn't have enough cards, and so it kept creating decks and killing them. Like, it had thousands of decks in Gruul when I was trying to load the first Gruul, and it wouldn't load. It was like, okay, so that's a wash. So these are all random. These are all basically brand new tribes. So they have a long ways to catch up. And it's going to be funny because I'm sure some of them will beat the 17 mark when they're not fighting, because they're going to be fighting each other mostly. And then when they finally fight that white deck, that white deck is just going to trounce them. Tournament number 632 since I created the new. And that's actually not even technically correct because I had to change the way that tournament counter counted at one point because it wasn't counting something for some reason. Can't even cast a land. Come on. You can't cast lands. What am I saying? Ooh, what? Horrors of... There you go. There's my code for pulling lands. Horrors of pull the Blooming Marsh because it's in black. Cinder Barons, because all these tap lands are legal regardless of set. Restoration Gearsmith. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video. As soon as this match is over, I'm going to end the video and leave it at that. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. No one's probably watched this long. I am the only one who finds these random decks this interesting, I'm sure. If you have watched, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time when we can do an Apex match for the dual color, hopefully the dual color decks. unless the dual color decks perform worse than the new monocolor decks, but I highly doubt that. They can barely string two lines together. It's hilarious. It's hilarious because they get really good at it later. Night market lookout versus night market lookout.